Toni Morrison. Chloe Anthony Wofford Morrison, born Chloe Ardelia Wofford, on February 18, 1931, died on August 5, 2019, known as Toni Morrison, was an American novelist. Her first novel, The Bluest Eye, was published in 1970. The critically acclaimed Song of Solomon, 1977, brought her national attention and won the National Book Critics Circle Award. In 1988, Morrison won the Pulitzer Prize for Beloved. 1987, she was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1993. Born and raised in Lorain, Ohio, Morrison graduated from Howard University in 1953 with a B.A. in English. She earned a master's degree in American literature from Cornell University in 1955. In 1957, she returned to Howard University, was married, and had 2 children before divorcing in 1964. Morrison became the first Black female editor in fiction at Random House in New York City in the late 1960s. She developed her own reputation as an author in the 1970s and 80s. Her novel Beloved was made into a film in 1998. Morrison's works are praised for addressing the harsh consequences of racism in the United States and the Black American experience. The National Endowment for the Humanities selected Morrison for the Jefferson Lecture, the U.S. federal government's highest honor for achievement in the humanities, in 1996. She was honored with the National Book Foundation's Medal of Distinguished Contribution to American Letters the same year. President Barack Obama presented her with the Presidential Medal of Freedom on May 29, 2012. She received the PN/Saul Bellow Award for Achievement in American Fiction in 2016. Morrison was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame in 2020. In 1987, Morrison published her most celebrated novel, Beloved. It was inspired by the true story of an enslaved African-American woman, Margaret Garner, whose story Morrison had discovered when compiling the Black Book. Garner had escaped slavery but was pursued by slave hunters. Facing a return to slavery, Garner killed her 2-year-old daughter but was captured before she could kill herself. Morrison's novel imagines the dead baby returning as a ghost, Beloved, to haunt her mother and family. Beloved was a critical success and a bestseller for 25 weeks. The New York Times book reviewer Michiko Kakutani wrote that the scene of the mother killing her baby is so brutal and disturbing that it appears to warp time before and after into a single unwavering line of fate. Canadian writer Margaret Atwood wrote in a review for the New York Times, Ms. Morrison's versatility and technical and emotional range appear to know no bounds. If there were any doubts about her stature as a preeminent American novelist of her own or any other generation, Beloved will put them to rest. Some critics pan Beloved. African-American conservative social critic Stanley Crouch, for instance, complained in his review in the New Republic that the novel reads largely like a melodrama lashed to the structural conceits of the miniseries, and that Morrison perpetually interrupts her narrative with maudlin ideological commercials. Despite overall high acclaim, Beloved failed to win the prestigious National Book Award or the National Book Critics Circle Award. 48 Black critics and writers, among them Maya Angelou, protested the omission in a statement that the New York Times published on January 24, 1988. Despite the international stature of Toni Morrison, she has yet to receive the national recognition that her 5 major works of fiction entirely deserve, they wrote. 2 months later, Beloved won the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction. It also won an Anisfield Wolf Book Award. Beloved is the first of 3 novels about love and African-American history, sometimes called the Beloved Trilogy. Morrison said they are intended to be read together, explaining, "The conceptual connection is the search for the beloved, the part of the self that is you, and loves you, and is always there for you." The second novel in the trilogy, Jazz, came out in 1992. Told in language that imitates the rhythms of jazz music, the novel is about a love triangle during the Harlem Renaissance in New York City. According to Lynn Innes, Morrison sought to change not just the content and audience for her fiction. Her desire was to create stories which could be lingered over and relished, not consumed and gobbled as fast food. And at the same time to ensure that these stories and their characters had a strong historical and cultural base. In 1992, she also published her first book of literary criticism, Playing in the Dark, Whiteness in the Literary Imagination, 1992, an examination of the African American presence in white American literature. In 2016, Time magazine noted that Playing in the Dark was among Morrison's most assigned texts on U.S. college campuses, together with several of her novels in her 1993 Nobel Prize lecture. According to Lynn Innes, her 1990 series of Massey lectures at Harvard were published as Playing in the Dark, Whiteness in the Literary Imagination, 1992, and explore the construction of a non-white Africanist presence and personae in the works of Poe, Hawthorne, Melville, Cather, and Hemingway, arguing that all of us are bereft when criticism remains too polite or too fearful to notice a disrupting darkness before its eyes. Before the third novel of the beloved trilogy was published, Morrison was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1993. The citation praised her as an author who, in novels characterized by visionary force and poetic import, gives life to an essential aspect of American reality. She was the first Black woman of any nationality to win the prize. In her acceptance speech, Morrison said, "We die. That may be the meaning of life. But we do language. That may be the measure of our lives." In her Nobel lecture, Morrison talked about the power of storytelling. To make her point, she told a story. She spoke about a blind, old, Black woman who is approached by a group of young people. They demand of her, "Is there no context for our lives? No song, no literature, no poem full of vitamins, no history connected to experience that you can pass along to help us start strong? Think of our lives and tell us your particularized world. Make up a story." In 1996, the National Endowment for the Humanities selected Morrison for the Jefferson Lecture, the U.S. federal government's highest honor for distinguished intellectual achievement in the humanities. Morrison's lecture, entitled The Future of Time, Literature and Diminished Expectations, began with the aphorism, "Time, it seems, has no future." She cautioned against the misuse of history to diminish expectations of the future. Morrison was also honored with the 1996 National Book Foundation's Medal of Distinguished Contribution to American Letters, which is awarded to a writer who has enriched our literary heritage over a life of service or a corpus of work. The third novel of her beloved trilogy, Paradise, about citizens of an all-Black town, came out in 1997. The following year, Morrison was on the cover of Time magazine, making her only the second female writer of fiction and second Black writer of fiction to appear on what was perhaps the most significant U.S. magazine cover of the era. From 1989 until her retirement in 2006, Morrison held the Robert F. Goheen Chair in the Humanities at Princeton University. She said she did not think much of modern fiction writers who reference their own lives instead of inventing new material. And she used to tell her creative writing students, "I don't want to hear about your little life, okay?" Similarly, she chose not to write about her own life in a memoir or autobiography. Though based in the creative writing program at Princeton, Morrison did not regularly offer writing workshops to students after the late 1990s, a fact that earned her some criticism. Rather, she conceived and developed the Princeton Atelier, a program that brings together students with writers and performing artists. Together, the students and the artists produce works of art that are presented to the public after a semester of collaboration. Inspired by her curatorship at the Louvre Museum, Morrison returned to Princeton in the fall 2008 to lead a small seminar, also entitled The Foreigner's Home. On November 17, 2017, Princeton University dedicated Morrison Hall, a building previously called West College, in her honor. Morrison died at Montefiore Medical Center in the Bronx, New York City, on August 5, 2019, from complications of pneumonia. She was 88 years old. A memorial tribute was held on November 21, 2019, at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in the Morningside Heights neighborhood of Manhattan in New York City. Morrison was eulogized by, among others, Oprah Winfrey, Angela Davis, Michael Ondaatje, David Remnick, Fran Lebowitz, Ta-Nehisi Coates, and Edwidge Danticat. The jazz saxophonist David Murray performed a musical tribute. Thanks for watching HerStory channel. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe our channel.